All right, today we're going to analyze yesterday's Grade 2 $900,000 Rebel Stakes from Oaklawn Park. It was a major Kentucky Derby prep race. It was won decisively by the Todd Pletcher-trained Magnum Moon, a big, scopy son of Malibu Moon. He broke his maiden January 13th in impressive fashion at Gulfstream. This is a race we actually did a video after. He was very impressive in his debut. He come back second out of Tampa. Pletcher and Saez decided to give him an education that day. They, rated him behind a slow pace, dropped him in where he could take some dirt, some kickback in his face. They got his face dirty. They waited to the top of the lane, and Saez steered him out 4 wide. It really was never asked. I mean, he won by 2 lengths, and Saez, never even went to a moderate hand ride on him. He was as still as a statue in that Tampa win. And Magnum Moon stepped up, 3.5 length winner in the Rebel yesterday. You see Solimini second. The very promising 2-year-old was second in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. This was a comeback race for Solimini. We'll get into, the kind of trip and, maybe a moderate amount of trouble he had when we review the race here in a minute. And Combat, the very steady. This was a horse that just likes to run seconds and thirds, kind of a, one pace, honest, grinding type horse. He run a solid third in the race. You see here the buyer speed figure for the Rebel came back a 97, which is, that figure is faster than it's been the last 2 years. Malagasi won the race last year for Pletcher. Cupid won the race 2 years ago for Baffert. Both of those were horses that were, kind of well regarded because they were coming from big stables and had some hype to them, but they didn't run a number quite as good as Magnum Moon's 97. Now in the grand scheme of things, the fastest buyer in the history of the Rebel Stakes was 112 by Smarty Jones, which you see here coming in the year 2004. The Rebel wasn't even a graded stakes race at the time, and this was a very startling performance. When Smarty Jones won the Rebel, it was it was very impressive, but even more startling than the performance was the figure afterwards. I mean, a lot of people, Smarty Jones wasn't even the favorite. In fact, he was about the 3rd choice in the Rebel this year. And you see he had good form coming in. He run a gigantic number in the PA nursery, winning by 15 as a 2-year-old. But, it was a restricted race. It was Philadelphia Park. So, people kind of thought he was just a numbers horse. And, he hadn't... he hadn't proven his class to enough people at this point. Obviously the Rebel wasn't a graded stakes race either at the time, so he'd never competed in a graded stake race. But they actually made Purge the favorite in the race. That was a Todd Pletcher son of Pulpit that only had 2 races. Had actually a form kind of similar to Magnum Moon. But Purge's 2 races were 6 furlongs. Magnum Moon stretched out second time. I kind of honestly thought Magnum Moon had a little better form of the 2. But anyway, when Smarty Jones won this race, we thought we saw a really good performance. But I was a figure maker at the time. I don't know if people know this. I made figures for Timeform US when they came in. And, as a professional bettor, I made a lot of figures. But, I mean, this was one of these races that was just when you tried to make the figure for it that day, you just couldn't believe it. It was like, how 112, is that for real? But it was proven to be for real in subsequent races. Smarty Jones won the Arkansas Derby, the Kentucky Derby, the Preakness by 11.5 lengths, actually bettering that Rebel figure. Purge, the horse that was second in the Rebel for Pletcher, he won, I believe it was the Peter Pan by about 6 lengths and 147 and change. He won the Jim Dandy by 6 lengths and like 147-2 at Saratoga. And he won the Grade 1 Cigar Mile to finish his career. So, I mean, Purge, all of those races, I think when Purge won the Grade 1 Cigar Mile, it was by 4 lengths, too. He won it, like, decisively. He was like a price. I want to say he was 25-1 that day. But anyway, I mean, when Purge is on, he's on. But so, you know, looking at Magnum Moon's 97 in terms of where it fits in the history of the race, you know, certainly couldn't hold a candle to the fastest that's ever been run, 112 of Smarty Jones, which is 15 points higher. You see Pine Bluff, a horse in the early 90s, won this Rebel Stakes with 106. It was a Grade 3 at that time. Actually lost its graded stake status, if you can believe that. But Pine Bluff has the second fastest at 106, which is still 9 points faster than Magnum Moon's here. You know, you see he was 30 cents on a dollar. He come back in the Arkansas Derby. An interesting thing about Pine Bluff, he won the race by a neck over Lily T. And there was, you know, 7 lengths back to the third place horse. And the figure that Pine Bluff and Lily T got for the Arkansas Derby, 107, they were the 2 fastest horses coming into the Kentucky Derby that year on last out numbers. That was the year of the European sensation Arazi. They pounded Arazi. But, you know, Pine Bluff with the best fig he had the co-best fig in the race. He went off at 10-1. And Lily T was even longer than that. I want to say about 18-1 with Pat Day. You don't get Pat Day at Churchill at a price too often, but you did that day. And Lily T turned the tables on Pine Bluff. But Pine Bluff came back and won the Preakness. And then the Belmont, the second, I believe this was tied with Easy Goers, 226 for the second fastest Belmont in history. You know, obviously the Great Secretariat went 224. But Pine Bluff ran a really good race in the Belmont. I think people forget that. AP Indy, who, you know, AP Indy would run with his head low and could just run all day. AP Indy was a sensational 3-year-old for Neil Drysdale, won the Breeders' Cup Classic later in the year. And I mean, everyone knows who AP Indy is as a stallion. He was an all-time great stallion with dirt routers, but, you know, very good racehorse, too, was AP Indy. So you see Pine Bluff just mixed it up the whole way. They went 47 over a good track, 111-4 for the Belmont. Fought the whole way. AP Indy was, you know, just life and death to wear him down, and that was the last race Pine Bluff ever ran. So, you know, the 97 for Magnum Moon, it's from a historical perspective, it's about an average type race. You know, it's not you know, certainly not in with the great performances in the history of the Rebel Stakes from a number standpoint. Now, you had a horse named Victory Gallop, who was an excellent horse, actually run the fastest figure in the history of the Rebel for any horse coming off a layoff into the race, which Salamini was doing. Indeed, you see Victory Gallop here. You know, his final 2-year-old race was in November 1st of 1997 in the Laurel Futurity in the Slop. You know, he closed, but he come back in the Rebel Stakes off of, you know, all of December and then, you know, over 100 days off. So this was a clear layoff here, very similar to Salamini's. Actually, a little longer layoff than Salamini's. And he happened to win the Rebel with 105 buyer. You know, you see Lost Whip prevailed. Good performance for in fact, you know, like I said, it was the highest by any horse off the bench, basically doing what Salamini was attempting to do. So those were the kind of numbers that you wanted to see going into the race. I mean, if anything approached a 106 to 112, you had to get like over the moon excited. Where if a horse like Salamini were to come back and run 105 off the bench, you know, that would have left you very excited, obviously. I mean, look what Victory Gallop's done through his career. You know, he won the Arkansas Derby. Believe it or not, it's 7-1 next time. was kind of dismissed. And second in the Kentucky Derby at 14-1, won the Belmont. Just an excellent horse was Victory Gallop. And of course, you have the Zayat Stables American Pharoah, the 2015 Triple Crown winner. He won the Rebel Stakes with a 100-figure off a layoff, and Solomini's also owned by Zayat. You've got basically the similar move, starting their 3-year-old campaign in the Rebel, and you see when American Pharoah won this Rebel Stakes, it was a very sloppy track, as you see here. But he had a sprung shoe that race. It was called a sprung, basically a bent shoe, and it was bent from the start of the race. You can see it. I don't know if it's quite clear enough, but you see it here, the image coming up. You got the nail coming out. So American Pharoah raced on that the entire, the entire way in the 2015 Rebel, and still, managed a 100-figure off the layoff. So anyway, I just wanted to kind of put, the Rebel into perspective figure-wise before we watch it. It was 15 points from, it was a long way away from Smarty Jones. It was better than the last 2 years, average number-wise. So with that said, let's go take a look at the Rebel Stakes yesterday. Okay, here's the tape for the Rebel Stakes. You got the 3 is going to be Solomini. He's got the Zayat silks here, those famous Zayat colors. The 4 is Magnum Moon. You see the purple colors up that Luis Saez is wearing. Those are the 2 horses you really want to focus on. Also, Jose Ortiz is riding, the rail horse here for Asmussen. Note how aggressive he is. I mean, he really, really sends. You're going to see Magnum Moon win the break, and Jose Ortiz is going to, push and shove to try to get to the front. And it forced an honest pace. It certainly wasn't a fast pace. When you look at the pace figures and everything coming back for the day, it's what we would call an honest pace. In fact, this race was a truly run race at every stage. It was a very very honestly run race in my opinion. But with that said, we're going to run the tape here. See a little slight bump there. Magnum Moon broke very sharp. He had a slight bump with the 5. He's got a good position, and there's Jose Ortiz rushing up the rail after, not necessarily breaking on top, but he is on top now. And Solomini's down here, kind of in a pocket. He is in the pocket inside. He makes a little, has some funny action here, and kind of cocks his head to the infield. A little bit of greenness. It's something I could show you on the head-on replay, after we get done running this. But you see Magnum Moon was caught 3 wide through the first turn, and he's got a pretty quality horse. So Lucas here out 4 wide, kind of on his flank. So the trip wasn't as easy for Magnum Moon as you might think. I mean, he really had to earn this race. So he's 3 wide here. He was 3 wide into the first turn. The Lucas horse kind of basically forced him along a little bit. Now he's going really good here, and you're going to see Solomini's being asked. He's being put to a ride down here. So Flavien Prat is gunning. Jose Ortiz looks like he left a little room, but this is one of the hardest riders in the country to come through, and you see Jose Ortiz going to come in and make it really tight here on Solomini. And, so Flavien Prat's just got to back out there. That really, that really was a decisive moment for Solomini. And, you see him, battling away here, just plugging away on the wrong lead. He's going to grind out second over Combatant, who's your underneath horse. But look at Magnum Moon draw off like a nice thing. I mean, just very impressive. Magnum Moon, had an excellent gallop out. I mean, he was just, you see big colt here, just full of energy after the wire. You know, I thought he'd come back really good too. You know, he looked like a fresh horse coming back. So, I mean, this is a May foal. He's a May 9th foal. He won't even be 3 by the time they run the Kentucky Derby. You got the Apollo curse, the supposed Apollo curse to deal with because he hasn't, you know, he's never started at age 3, but just a very, very good performance from Magnum Moon, dominating this race. Okay, transitioning to the head-on view, we're going to take a look. I know it's a little grainy here, but here's Solomini inside in the blue colors just behind the leader. Watch him throw his head inside here. You know, so slightly kind of cocked his head, just, you know, agitated cocking of his head towards the infield. Real brief kind of jerk. You know, you see Jose Ortiz he had a plan in this race. He wanted to send this Asmussen horse to the lead. He wanted to act like he was going to leave the rail open. And, you know, Flavien Prat he's going to a ride here. The door's open for Jose, but the door is going to be closed. I mean, Solomini, if he had, you know, a sharper turn of foot, might have been able to get through there, but he's just not that kind of horse with a quick turn of foot and a burst. So he kind of, you know, he gets shuffled out of there, and he's got to tip to the outside and, you know, lose some momentum. So, I mean, it's just race riding by Jose Ortiz there. I mean, you know, I don't think he would have left as much room and kind of enticed Flavien Prat to come inside if he had known that Solomini was more of a push-button horse. But Solomini's not that type of horse. He's kind of a grinder. He had to take up alter course, come outside, and, you know, he finished very one-paced after that incident. So that's basically the trouble that Solomini had in the running. You know, probably minor trouble, to be honest, but he was coming off a layoff, and, you know, he run to his good 2-year-old form, and that's generally a good sign. I mean, I know a lot of sheep players like that when you run a number, you know, up to your 2-year-old form, and there's opportunity to go forward. If he steps forward next time, it'll be a very interesting horse in the Derby. Okay, and the final bit of trouble to note, you see this gray horse here, the 9. This is a 50-to-1 shot of Steve Asmussen's named Zing Zang, kind of a one-dimensional closer. I was a little surprised that, Asmussen decided to take a shot and run him in the race, but he had some trouble in a couple of stages, and we'll run it here. You're going to watch him. You know, he's actually going to come. The 5's going to come out a bit, and he's going to come over the heels of the 10. Going into the first turn. Let's watch and see. See, the 5 comes out, and he actually comes right across the heels of the 10, causes some trouble for his rider, and he ends up way back behind a pace that, you know, you had Jose Ortiz basically forcing an honest pace, but this was a pretty average pace, especially for this caliber of horse. And you see the 9 horse here has been, you know, shuffled back a good ways. He probably lost a little bit of position. We'll say maybe, you know, 2 or 3 lengths there, maybe 2.5 lengths. Now I'll fast forward here to the stretch, and you can see another issue we have. Okay, Zing Zang's down here. The rider ended up taking him to the fence and try to grind up the fence here, which a lot of closers don't like to do. They generally like to be tipped out to the clear. You're going to watch, he gets shut off. The 6, you know, it wasn't too bad. It wasn't too major. It actually looked a little worse on the head-on. But, you know, Zing Zang is the type of horse, if he takes a big class drop, if he gets a fast and contested pace, you know, I think he'll be able to, you know, wake up, have a big heroic stretch running finish. It won't be in any race we'll be following on this channel, but he might be a horse to look at, you know, on the class drop. If he catches a fast and contested early pace, he'll come with a powerful close. So that's just a side note there. But there is Magnum Moon. There is Saez pumping the fist. He's got a very good horse. It's a big colt. You know, he's Mayful. He's got time to. There's real upside to him. I mean, this is a horse that's not fully exposed on form, and you know, just his fourth start will come next time. Forward movement, bigger things ahead for Magnum Moon. Talented Fletcher.